Welcome back to the Modern Mumma. Today I have with me a very good friend of over 22 years, Ruwani. So, hi Rooney, how are you?
I'm good, Nishma. Nice to talk to you. Have you had a good day?
Yes, it's been a busy one. I've been at work today,
Uh-huh.
but it's all fun and games, you
Oh,
know.
good.
Yeah. How about you?
Good. It's my day off today because I work 3 full days midweek. So it's
Right.
been quite nice not having to wake up early morning and brush off. So been a good day. Yes, thank you.
Oh, good. So, Rooney, we met over 22 years ago in
Mm-hmm.
a very unusual place
Mm-hmm.
of Doha Airport.
Yeah, we did. That was such a weird place to meet
It
and
was.
to
You were
make
on
a
your way to
friend.
Sri Lanka. You were on your
Mm-hmm.
way to Sri Lanka. We were on our way to Kuala Lumpur.
Mm-hmm.
You had your three children with you, and I had my eldest son with me.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And we kind of got talking. The kids were playing. This was when Doha Airport was very old, and there was no announcement, so we nearly missed our flight. I remember we had to run.
Mm-hmm.
The kids were so busy playing. But then we hooked up when we got back to the UK,
Yeah, it was
which
it
was
was
really nice.
yes, it was great
Really nice.
because when you said where you lived, we realized that you were not that far away. So it
Yes,
was
that's
like
right.
we were meant to meet and become friends over the years, isn't it?
Absolutely. So tell me a bit about you, your children, your
Um,
family.
mm-hmm. So, as you know, I grew up in Sri Lanka. I had my full education there in one school because that's how it is over there. We don't have primary, middle, and upper school like we have over here. So you
Uh-huh.
go to one school, and I went to a convent school, a very strict Catholic convent school,
Okay.
which was great. And we had nuns who actually did all the teaching, and there was strict discipline. But I think I have gained so much from having that childhood in that kind of strict discipline as well. And I'm one of uh, three brothers. So I was the only girl in the family, and then when I was 20, I met my husband, got married a few months, 6 months later, and came over to
Wow.
UK. And
And was that
that's,
your first time in the UK?
I was here a few months before my wedding because I had not
Okay.
been to UK. But yes, it was all very new to me then.
And your family were all still back in Sri Lanka?
Mm-hmm. They all were.
Wow. Okay. So very different then.
Very different, but it's really funny at the same time because during those days you didn't overthink anything, so you just took the things as they came and you kind of adjusted yourself. So it wasn't
True.
a very big deal in some ways. It wasn't like something that was huge for me at the time. It was just the next thing I just did, so
Yes, I know what you're saying, but completely different country, new people, no family, but you've adjusted so well from the years I've known you, and when you tell me. And then when did you have your children? You've got three, so you've got twins. Your first set of children are twins. When did you
mm-hmm.
have them?
I had them in 1994, and
Okay.
actually 3 months into the pregnancy, my consultant told me you have twins. So I was really, really thrilled about that. Um,
Okay.
because when I was in school, my best friends were twins. They were identical twins, two girls. And I thought what a lovely relationship they had. They couldn't do without each other.
Uh-huh.
And so it was really nice. I always thought, oh, it would be nice to have twins. But when I knew I would potentially have twins, it was really great. I was really thrilled to bits about
And
that.
do you have twins? That they sometimes say twins run in the family, don't they? Do you have twins in your family?
Not in my family, but in my husband's family, Nalaka's family, they have
You do.
twins. Uh,
Okay.
but I think because I had twins that were like a girl and a boy, they say it's more like having two babies, separate
Yes.
babies, rather than a sort of something that comes down the line.
And and obviously you then later had a third one, but let's talk about the twins. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
as happy as you were and overjoyed
Mm-hmm.
when they were born, how did you cope?
I
How did you
don't know to
manage?
at the time when a lot of people ask me that, I'm like, honestly, I don't know. I think I just functioned like a robot. It was all new to me. They were constantly awake, constantly hungry. I did have my parents who came over and helped me out the first sort of a month and a half, which was quite nice. But it was all new. When you have twins the first time round and you're sort of very young and very inexperienced, it is
Yes.
a challenge because with one you have two hands and you can look after the baby, but when you have two at the same time, it's quite different. And I think as a first time mom, you definitely benefit from having help.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, yeah. So it was difficult.
And then how many years later did you have your second child or your third child?
She came 1 year and 3 months later,
Oh, okay.
and
So not a big gap then.
not a big gap. And I didn't even know I was pregnant at the time, because I was quite busy with the twins, and it's only when I everything started making me feel a bit sick, I thought, oh, hang on a minute, let me just check. And yes, and then my third one, Charge, came along a year later.
And then how was that coping with three of them?
It was difficult, I think, especially in some ways. Now looking back, in some ways it was easy because what you do for one, you do for three at the same time. Like I used to bath them together, I used to feed them together, do all of that. But my third child, Tasha, she actually was born with really bad infantile eczema, which to date she actually has it. So that was extra challenging because she was not able to sleep or eat. She was constantly sort of irritable. So it
So she had
was,
that from birth.
she had that from birth. I think it kind of showed up really after about a month. The
Okay.
first month, her skin color and everything looked kind of normal, and it's about after the first month finish, I noticed that she was developing the skin condition.
Okay.
Yes, so that
Oh, that must have
was.
been quite difficult, especially at that age when they want to scratch and you've got to
Mm-hmm.
stop them from scratching and things.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. It was quite difficult because you obviously worry about your child and the fact that you're tired, because you
Yes.
don't get much sleep, and you have two others to take care of, and there's this little helpless child who needs
Yeah.
your time and attention more than the other two. So you have to kind of juggle it and choose
Yes.
as to who needs more of your time and attention. So that was quite challenging, yes.
Wow. And one is enough usually, and then you've got all of a sudden you've got a three. So, but like you say, I used to think that. I used to think having twins would be brilliant because I'd only ever wanted two children. Two children, they'd come together, and you know what? That would be it. I'd be done.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, this is what I used to dream, and
Mm-hmm.
hope for. I didn't have twins. Um, but that's how I always thought it would be very easy. If you only want two children, then you just have the twins and you get on with it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's not easy. But do you find your twins are very close? I mean, it's a boy and a girl, but how do you find their relationship?
They have actually a very close relationship, and sometimes I
Hmm.
watch the two of them because now they're professionals. They work, but
Yes.
they did buy a place together, and they go shopping together on a Sunday. And I watch them, and I think you're like an old married couple, you know.
Oh, really?
It's really funny watching them sometimes, and they kind of able to calm the other person down, or each one of them is quite different in personality, but they kind of like a marriage in a way. They balance each other out quite well.
A
So
real
they,
strong bond. They do say twins have this bond that you can't even imagine, but they know that bond, don't they?
mm-hmm. So they seem to have that, and it's quite nice to see that. They have each other for anything, so that's quite nice.
And then there's Tasha. So how does Tasha fit into this? Because there's always a saying about the third child is left to grow up on their own, isn't it?
Well, yes, that's true. So since the two of them are close and they have the kind of personalities that kind of click, and whereas Tasha, she's a whole different kettle of fish. In her way, she's quite bossy, and she sometimes in ways thinks she's the elder one, and so they do clash. It's like
Well,
two
she's making
against
her
ones.
stance, isn't she? She's
Yeah.
making her stance that, hey, I'm here, don't forget me, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. And I think sometimes, don't you think the younger child has to kind of do a lot more for themselves?
Of
Um,
course, yes. I do
and
find that with mine too as well.
yeah, I think, when I talk to some of my friends and I see their kids, and I think, when they're the younger ones, sometimes they have to be that much a little bit tougher than the others.
Mm,
So it's a bit like that. But I mean, they get on fine. And they're all very close, but obviously twins have quite a special relationship.
of course, yes, yes. Well, I think it was, well, I'd known you a few years, and then
Mm-hmm.
I remember you saying to me, Nishma, I'm going to go back to Sri Lanka. I'm going to take my
Mm-hmm.
children back to Sri Lanka, and I'm going to educate them out there. I want them to have the culture and the understanding of, their roots,
Mm-hmm.
which I was quite shocked that you were going to be doing that, but you
Mm-hmm.
did. You said, oh, you're only going to go for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was 2001 or 2002, maybe. You did. You packed up shop here in the UK and
Mm-hmm.
you moved to Sri Lanka, which I thought, 2 years
Was
max,
unusual.
you'd be
Mm.
back.
Mm.
This was way before the time of WhatsApps and Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
etc. And
Mm-hmm.
off you went. Um, and 10 years later,
Mm-hmm.
you came back.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that must have been an absolutely amazing experience and quite a brave decision to make, I think. Tell me a bit about that. How did it all work out for you? How was it for for your children?
Mm-hmm. Um, right. So the decision to go back was because I had such a wonderful, carefree childhood growing up, and I just thought, okay, I want my kids to experience that kind of culture, and the fact that people in Sri Lanka are very easygoing, and because of the weather and everything, and because, like I said, Tasha had this condition, which is a very, very
Yes,
sort of a dry eczema, and because of the humidity in Sri Lanka, I thought that would help, because I just had taken her to all these consultants and doctors, but nobody could really help her, and she had a few issues like speech delay and things like that. So went to Sri Lanka thinking, okay, let's just, we gonna benefiting things where she can improve in her skin condition, maybe the sea air, because it's only a tiny island, you always have sea air around you, the humidity, and also for them to get the culture, to be able to get to know and spend time with their grandparents, cousins, the
oh,
extended family that we kind of
yes,
tend to have, which we don't
of
have
course,
anymore
yes.
because we're scattered all around the world. So we decided, okay, it's now or never, because they were just starting school. So it was a good
Mm.
time to go, not in the middle of any, important school years. So we thought, okay, let's give it a go for like 2 years. And we packed up till, honestly, Nishma, till the very last few days, I'm like, are we doing the right thing? Are we really crazy? We're just packing up, renting our house and just leaving. It's this really crazy thing to do. But then Nalaka said, right, we've decided no going back on it. We're going to do it. So we,
Wow. Well, you didn't take the decision lightly. You know, you've just explained
mm-hmm,
it was from the childhood and the schooling you'd had, Tasha's condition.
mm-hmm.
So it wasn't just like you woke up one morning and said, "That's it, we're going." You know, it was a decision you thought long and hard about.
Oh, absolutely. I think it was mostly driven by the fact that we wanted to do something that will make this child feel more
Yes.
comfortable, because it was hard to sort of watch her,
Mm.
being so uncomfortable and being ill all the time, in and out of hospitals with, different allergies and stuff. So yes, so it's worked out really well. They absolutely enjoyed it. It was hard at the beginning, because I remember as we went in, we lived next door to my parents separately, but next door. And I remember my son breaking all his toys and doing things he never did. And this was when he was just
Mm.
7 years old. And I remember sitting him down and saying, why are you doing this? You never did this. What's wrong? What seems to be the problem that you're doing things, behaving quite, differently? And
Yes.
what impressed me in that sense, when I look back now, is this 7-year-old boy took upon him to speak on behalf of his two sisters. And he told
Oh,
me,
okay.
yeah, and he actually told me, Mom, you never asked us what we want.
Oh,
And
wow.
yes, he said, you never asked us what we want, and you and Dad decided that you wanted to come over here, and you came over here, and I want to go back, and I want to have my own things back. And I was quite stumped, because they didn't know how to answer him, and especially you wouldn't expect like a 7-year-old little boy to have thought about it so much
Mm.
and to speak
It's
up
very
like
mature
very
thinking, isn't it? Very
absolutely.
insightful.
So I said, look, come on, we just give it a go. It's like a holiday, and you can go to the beach anytime you want. The weather's not going to stop us, that sort of thing.
They had many incentives.
Many incentives. We got a little dog, which is always great when you have children. I think, it teaches them so much about caring, about being gentle. So
Yes.
that was a good decision to get a little dog as well. But yeah, I mean, if you'd speak to them now, they'll say, that was a really, really super experience that they
How did
had.
they settle into school? Like when you took them, obviously from here, you took
Mm-hmm.
them there.
Mm-hmm.
How was it? How was it for them making friends, settling into school? I mean, the whole school culture must have been different.
Um,
How did that impact them?
okay, so when you asked me earlier that, as to why we decided to go as well, one other thing I would like to add is that at the time our kids were going to a prep school over here,
Mhm.
close
Yes.
by local, which is a great school. And we thought, okay, we're spending 3 lots of school fees, and that's what it's gonna cost. That's what's costing us. And we knew that we could educate them in a really good private international school over in Sri Lanka for the
Hmm.
cost of all three, for the cost of one child.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Hmm.
so we did put them into a international school. The first school they were in, called the British School in Colombo, and
Okay.
they started schooling there, and they settled in really well, because funnily there were other children whose parents were sort of British citizens, having been living here, have also decided to do a similar thing like us, where they thought it was good
Okay.
to go back and give them a
So they
couple of
weren't
years.
completely unique. They weren't completely unique to the situation. There were other children in the same boat,
Mm-hmm.
which must have helped.
Yes, I think so. Because if they went to a local school, it would have been a bit difficult, because they were not, sadly, very fluent in speaking Sinhalese.
Hmm.
And also, they would have stood out, they would have been a bit different. But
Yes.
For that reason, we decided to send them to international school. Also, the transition back, whenever we came back, would have been that much easier because of what they would have been studying, and the medium they would have been studying in as well would be
Yes.
English. So yeah, so
Okay.
it was good. They fitted in, pretty well.
And so you were going to try it out for 2 years. How did 2 years become almost 10
10
years?
years. So they had 2 years, and from that school, they moved over to another international school, simply because their other cousins were there, and we knew that school was really good, but there was a waiting list. So obviously, we've been thinking about moving them to the other school. So the twins moved over first, and I was shuttling between two schools for about a year. And then I managed to get Tasha in as well. And so they were really settled in this school. And I have to say, I think I had the best of both worlds, where we came back for the holidays and things like that back to England,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
Nalak, my husband, was working here. So he came back
Right.
after 2 years, and we were back and forth. The kids were really settled, they made friends, and we were doing all these wonderful things like traveling around Sri Lanka, just suddenly deciding, okay, let's have a picnic this weekend on
Yes.
the beach. And we would just, in a matter of an hour, we'd be on a lovely golden sand
Oh,
beach having a picnic, so
that
that
sounds
was
wonderful.
that was really nice to be able to do that.
And at this time, did you ask them if they wanted to continue staying, or did you just make that decision, or you all made the decision together? As you said, your husband came back.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so I was like on my own with the three kids, but like I said, every school holiday or half term, either he would come over or we would come over to England. And then after the 2 years, they were really happy and settled, and they wanted to stay. So we carried on, and we were happy with the education they were getting as well. And then just before, about 2 years before their GCSEs, we thought, okay, if we're going back, we need to think about going back now. So it's not going to be
Hmm.
too disruptive for them for their sort of exams and their, future education.
Yes.
And so we said, okay, guys, would you like to go back and go back to school there? And they were like, okay, we will give it a go. But so they did apply for schools here, and they did get in. But then when it came to the crunch, the kids are like, well, actually, Mum, we're quite happy here. We've settled in, we've got into the school teams, and, we've
Oh,
been
well.
going to be prefects and that sort of thing in school. So they
Mm.
said, okay, let's just carry on staying here. And so that's how it went all the way to 10 years until the time they finished their A levels.
So they all did their GCSEs and A levels there, and then came back for university here.
Well, even though there's only sort of a 1 year gap between the twins and Tasha, because Tasha's born end of September, she missed that one academic year. So she was, in fact, 2 academic years behind the twins. Whereas they were
Okay.
the
Yeah.
younger ones to get in, and because she was older, she,
The
kind of
older one.
missed.
Yes.
So she finished her GCSEs and came over to England, and then she went to a school here and did her A levels, whereas the twins finished their A levels. And talking about A levels, because of the time difference, it's like a 5.5 hour time difference. When they did their exams, they had their exams in the evening. They started at 5, 6
Okay.
in the evening, and they would go on till,
But they were doing it at UK times.
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. That's
So,
really interesting.
they were
Is that how
having.
it happens? Is that how it happens always? Because I mean, I'm an exams invigilator
Mm-hmm.
myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I have been doing exams virtually actually this week with children around the globe, but they work on the UK time, but their time difference isn't that different. But we're not doing board exams here.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing sort of internal, it's teacher assessed grades this year.
Mm.
But I didn't realize when they did the actual board exams, they have to do it on UK time. That's
Oh yeah,
something new I've learned
absolutely.
today.
Now today,
How did they cope with that then? How did they cope with that?
they were okay. It was odd for me because I never had
Yeah.
exams in the evening, but they were fine. I mean, I used to go at 9, 10 in the night to pick them up after their exams were finished. But I think it's because otherwise you have the copying and all of that just to make it
Yes.
fair. It had to be done all around the world if it was board exams at the same time, exact time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the twins then went to university, but obviously Tasha had to transition to A levels here.
Mm-hmm.
And how was that for Tasha? I mean, how did she find that?
I think it was a bit difficult for her, but then again, I have to say she sort of adapted really well. So where they were in Sri Lanka, it was a co-ed school, it's a mixed school. So when we came back here, we kind of had a chat with her and said, you know what, I think it'll be easier if you went to an all-girls school just to take that additional pressure off of going into a co-ed school where she wasn't quite used to the same sort of culture as it is over here. So we did send her to an all-girls school, and she fitted in sort of quite well, because I think what they have gained I mean, obviously with anything you get pros and cons, right?
Of course you
And
do.
what they gain from being over there is because it's such a small community. Everybody's just so friendly and quite outgoing in that sense. They're very comfortable talking to people, being around people, because you always have people around you, whether you like it or not, extended family, friends, so on. So because of that, I think that really helped her just to come back and just to kind of fit in. And education wise, I think the teaching methods and so on over here, they're expected to be a lot more independent. Whereas over in Sri Lanka, it's very much teacher led. So they're kind of, in a way, almost like everything's just handed to them and they just do the studying and that's the thing. So that she struggled a bit with, where she had to learn to be independent in her studies, and we did sort of get her some extra sort of tuition and help. But she did fine. She got good grades and she went on as well to university to do a degree afterwards.
Fantastic. That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. So you said earlier that your husband would come over in the holidays, or you would come to the UK. So really, in term time, you were almost a single mum.
I was, yes.
How did you manage with that? Because I've done it as well. So it's good to exchange stories.
Yeah,
of how you managed.
It was quite hard at times because you had 3 teenagers. They were all teenagers. And as soon as, I think especially boys, they get taller than you, they think they know more than you, And
Yes.
I had a few issues with my son where I found it difficult to get him to sort of listen to me. And as a mom, they don't come with an instruction book, do they? As to how to
absolutely
deal with stuff.
Don't.
You do your best the way you feel is right, like for you and for your family and how you are as a person. So it was quite tough. And I remember at one time he just wasn't listening to me. He was just doing his own thing. It was about 15, 16, getting into a bit of trouble in school. Nothing, serious, but mischievous stuff like cutting school, going
as
off
boys
to the
do.
moving, as boys do, going to the movies, and then I get calls from school. I'm sure, he was in school. Didn't you drop him off? And I'm like, yes, I did. And they're like, well, he's not here now. So
So
I
how
would.
did you cope with that? What did you do?
Well, you know what? Good thing for me was my son can't lie. Um,
Okay.
and I called him and I'm like, okay, I know you're not in school. Where are you? And he goes, oh, I'm watching a movie with my friends. And I'm like, okay, fine.
Oh,
I'll give you 10 minutes. You come out and stand outside, and I'm going to come and pick you up. And he would be standing outside in 10 minutes because it didn't take you that long to get anywhere in Colombo.
yeah.
And I would pick him up, take him straight back to school, hand him over, and say, right, you deal with it. And I would drive off. So I was quite a tough mom. I didn't sort of, say, laugh it off or anything.
No, no.
I've had to do that a couple of times. And
And I think for boys, they do need that male role model
oh,
sometimes, don't
absolutely.
they? And obviously, if Dad was back in the UK, he didn't
Mm-hmm.
always have that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's true.
but I think discipline in countries like in the schools in countries, Asia, Sri
Mm-hmm.
Lanka, Africa, very different to here. They deal with the children. I mean, they don't cane them or anything, I hope, but
Mm-hmm.
they do. They're quite, they put the fear of God into these children, and I think soon um, the kids sort themselves out, don't they?
Yeah, I think, it's very important to have that discipline. Obviously, not when I say discipline, not like corporate discipline that, like
No.
in some places you get that's not right, that's damaging. But, they need to know what's right and wrong and how to behave and how not to behave. And I think it's quite important that children learn that. And as a teacher myself, I know how important that is because that's really there for the children to have those boundaries, and
Yes.
especially when they're pushing those boundaries when they come to the age of sort of between 14 to 18. It's quite
Mm.
a difficult time, especially with boys, and they definitely need to have a good male role model at the time to guide them. And because at the time I was more or less on my own, it was very difficult. I did find it really difficult. And at one time, I remember just thinking, okay, what am I going to do? He's not listening. He's just thinks I'm like a joke or something. It's not. So what I did was I packed his stuff, his uniforms, his clothes, everything in a bag. I've been kind of threatening him with it like a couple of weeks before, saying, you don't listen to me, you're going to go live with your grandparents and your
Okay.
grandfather. So because I didn't do anything about it, it was like, mom's just saying that. But actually, one day I did do it. I went, picked him up from the school, and I drove to my parents. By that time, I had moved away from being next door to them
Yes.
to somewhere else. And I said, okay, this is where you're going to live now because you're not listening to me. Yeah. So you're going to live
Oh.
here, and your grandfather's going to be picking you, telling you what to do. And he said that he refused to get down from the car and said, I'm not getting down from the car. I'm not going to go in. I'm not going to live with my grandparents. And I said, all right, make up your mind. Either you come home and listen to me and behave, or
Mm.
you're going to stay. And then my dad had a word and said, look, mom's doing everything. She's doing so much for you. She's on her own. It's not easy. And mom's only doing all these things to teach you and to guide you. And if you feel that, she's not good, doing things the way you want and you don't want to listen, you stay with me and you live by my rules, he goes. And then
Oh, they don't want that, do they?
oh, no, no, they don't want that. And it's like parents are boring and, what have you.
Mm.
So he said, okay, I'll listen to mom. And he got back in the car. And yeah, and after that, he was a lot better.
You were aligned. So, just finishing up on their education in Sri Lanka,
Hmm.
do you have any, well, I guess, regrets of taking that decision and taking them there and staying for 10 years
Um,
when
I
you look back now?
I don't have regrets in terms of the education and the exposure they had to the
Hmm.
culture, and having a sense of belonging in terms of where they come from and why we think and do things the way we do because of the
Yes.
background we come from. So in that sense, they did get it. But the only thing I would say is, um, growing up in Sri Lanka, it's very much, you respect your teachers. When a teacher walks into your classroom, you will stand up and greet them. So because that culture is there, sometimes I feel that they are slightly suppressed in the way that they don't always encourage them to just air their opinions in school, or just question what teachers tell you. So that's one thing I would
Yes.
say is lacking with the education they had, because I think that's really important to question, because everybody is unique and you need to put forward
Yes.
your thoughts and
Absolutely.
your opinions. So that, I think, in some ways were hindered a little bit because of the culture, school culture, and how it is with respecting your elders and teachers and so on. But apart from
Mm.
that, I am so happy that we did what we did and they had that time over there, because it's just kind of made them able to sort of mingle with different people from different walks of life and cultures.
I think your children are very well rounded, from what I know of them.
Oh, thank
Very,
you.
very
But
wonderful children that you have. So you being a mum, what is
mhm,
important for you for being a mother, would
uh,
you say? We're
what,
talking about motherhood.
yes, right
What for
now,
you?
as in after the years of experience I've had, is that what you
I
mean?
guess
Yeah.
I guess you could reflect back now, yes.
Mm,
I mean, they might have been different back then and they're
mm-hmm,
different now, but
mm,
from your experience of
mm-hmm.
being a mother, I mean, your children are now how old?
Well, the twins will be, they're 26 and Tasha's 25, so no longer children, actually. They're
No,
young
young
adults.
adults. Your
Yeah.
your your adult children. Your adult children. So I guess from your experience of bringing them up, what three things would you give as a tip to other mothers who are not at this stage yet, but
Mm-hmm.
you could give from your experience to say these are things that you consider very very important being a mother.
Um, yeah. Well, in hindsight, at
Yes.
the time, you just do what you think is right. But I think it's important that they're happy. That's number one.
Hmm.
Make sure they're
Yeah.
happy. Number two is just to give them that sense of security that you are always there,
Of
for
course.
if they
Yes.
need you, and just be there to guide them. And number three, I think, is having boundaries and teaching them respect, because if they don't have that respect, then I think it's going to be very difficult for them to fit in society, or to do, in their careers or even in their personal lives, if they don't know to respect others, and first of all others and then themselves.
Yes.
So those are the three things I think it's important to sort of teach your children. And each one's situation as a mother, I think, is very different. It depends on who you are, how you think, and what your
Yes. Very
family
true.
life is. And I think as mothers, all mothers do their very best, and we're quite ours critiques, really, because we never give ourselves a pat on the back. But we all do the best we can. So
Absolutely,
mm-hmm,
absolutely. That's all we can do. Like you said, they don't come with a guidebook, do they, or
mm-hmm,
a manual of how to bring up children. And like you said, everybody's situations are different. But for you, I guess, although you spent 10 years there,
mm-hmm,
you kind of brought them up here till seven, then you took them back to Sri Lanka and you brought them back to the UK.
mm-hmm.
How did you find that as a mother, bringing them up in two completely different countries, completely different cultures? How was that for you?
I can't.
And yet they are very, very integrated into both cultures, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. I think, for me, I didn't overthink things. I still don't. I just go with the flow of things. And I
Yes,
think if you try to like plan things and control things and overthink things, then everything becomes quite complicated because life never goes according to how you would want it. So, another
sure,
thing I would tell all those mums out there from personal experience is just to take things as they come, and also teach your children to be able to do the same, because you cannot have a set plan and expect it to work, because it doesn't. And if you're in that mindset, then you find it really hard to cope with life, because life is really hard you know
mm,
it's not
yes,
easy. So I think I just kind of went with the flow of it, and I made everything seem like something new, like an adventure.
hmm, yeah,
Because I
yeah.
think at the end of the day, it is, isn't it? Life is an
Life is
adventure.
one big long adventure and journey.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
and
absolutely.
learn from all sorts of things. And I think the bad, difficult things that happen in your life actually teach you the most you know
Yes, yes,
and it makes you a better person in some ways, because it makes you realize how you feel, and you wouldn't want others to feel that way, so you would use that in a positive way, or at least you try to. And that
yeah,
just makes it better, and it kind of just go with the flow of things and deal with things as they come. I think that was my attitude answering your question. So
yes.
it was fine. It was like having two homes, which is
Hmm.
I have to say, I feel very lucky to have been able to have two homes, one over here and one over there.
Yeah, it is lovely. I mean, my children have been educated in this country fully, but we've lived between two countries at
Mm-hmm.
times, Spain and UK, and it is. You're very right.
Mm.
When people look at from outside, they think, oh, it must be so hard,
Mm.
oh, your husband's not with you, or, you know, um, and you're coping on your own. And when I used to get that, I used to say, actually, I've got the best of both worlds. I get to go to
Absolutely.
Spain, I get to live in the UK, and I built a life in both countries,
Mm-hmm.
which is not for everybody. I get that, but
Yeah.
it certainly is an adventure. And like your children, every holiday, I mean, literally, they would break up from school at 2 o'clock, and at 5 o'clock, we'd been on an aeroplane at
Mm-hmm.
Gatwick going to Spain.
Mm.
And it was, in their younger days, it was such an adventure.
Yeah.
They had a house here, they had a house there.
Yeah.
The only thing that changed was the country and the
Mm-hmm.
language. But even then, they loved it, absolutely loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so now your children, if we fast forward, your
Mm-hmm.
children are 26 and 25.
Mm.
So being a mother to these young adults,
Mm-hmm.
what is that like?
Right. What I'm trying to do now is break away from being like,
You're trying to break away.
I'm trying to break away. I'm
They
trying
haven't
to
bled to
have my
death.
space, because I need my quiet time and I need my space. I mean, so I'm just telling myself, right, it's high time now. I'm not going to be looking after them. Obviously, I do care about them, and that's not going to change. But I think we don't do any favors for our kids if we're constantly looking after them and doing stuff for them. It's their turn now. Get out there, get yourself a good job, get a life, and get on with it. That's what I tell them.
Which your children have done. They've all got good jobs. I mean, you said your twins have bought a place,
Mm-hmm.
which they moved out into, and
Mm-hmm.
then they in the pandemic they moved back home again.
Yes, and just to add a little bit more, I actually found them the place myself, because I went flat shopping for them, and I saw this place, and I'm like, okay, right, this is perfect. And they got it, and when the pandemic came, I thought, oh, they're coming for a week, so that's okay, we're all in lockdown. They came back in October, and they're still here, quite happily staying at home. And I'm like,
You do crack
guys,
me up.
yeah, I'm like, guys, this is supposed to have been like a 1, 2 weeks, 6 months. Have you thought about going back? And didn't have a response to that. And I'm like, now you got to go. Yeah, you got a place. You overstayed your welcome. You need to go back, kind of thing.
And how do they react to that? What do they
Um,
think?
and they're like,
Do they take you seriously?
no, they don't take me seriously. Except, and sometimes when I'm really tired. But then I have to say they're really good. Everybody helps in and does things. But I think I would like them to be independent. They're just too much around us, and I don't think it's also because of the pandemic that's going on.
That
Everybody's
hasn't
lives have
helped.
changed
Yeah.
so much, but I think it shouldn't take too much out of these young people, because they should be out there moving around, getting to know people of their own age without being too much around the adults. And we too, I think, now need a sort of space. It's like living with 3 other adults now with different thoughts and opinions, which is another challenge. So being a mother never ends.
It
It
doesn't, does
never
it?
ends. It brings along different sets of worries. Like someone said, when your kids are little, they're little worries. When they become big, they're big worries, which is true,
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
you don't
very.
have that same sense of, not control, but that same sense where you seem to be in control anymore, because you got, it's a lot of talking back and forth, discussions, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and like you say, expressing the opinions, which we have brought them up to express, but then sometimes you just think, sometimes you're just not interested.
Yeah,
Not
it's
interested,
interested.
Go off and do what you need to do,
Yeah,
kind of thing.
get on with
But
it, kind of thing.
I'm at that stage,
Yeah.
I've been home with them
Mm.
throughout the pandemic, and I've been
Mhm.
working, well, this week and and I'll be working next week. Well,
Mhm.
I came home on Monday. Well, when I told them I was going to work, they were like, "What do you mean you're going to work? You
Mhm.
can't possibly go to work. Who's going to make breakfast, lunch, and dinner?"
Mm.
And then I came back on Monday, and they said to me, "How much do you get paid?" I said,
Mhm.
"Why?" They said, "Because you know what? Maybe we could all chip in and pay your day rate at work. And
Mhm.
therefore, you don't have to go to work
Mm.
and you can stay at home and continue doing what you do for us."
Mm.
I thought, how cheeky that was.
Absolutely. Nish, you need to do what I do. When I started work, I was home for over a year, since last
Yeah,
March.
well, I've been the same.
Yeah, and doing everything. And I'm like, is this my life? Am I going to
Yeah.
be like a maid to everybody else, being underpaid, not appreciated as much? And then I started working in March, and I told these guys, look, I'm going to work. I've got long hours.
Hmm.
I'm not cooking. When I come home, I expect to have a nice hot meal made, the house clean the way it is normally when I'm home, and those are my expectations. And if I come back and things are not done, then I think we're going to have lots of words. So now I come home and I have a cooked meal.
Oh,
Yes,
brilliant.
I have a shower, I sit on the couch, put my feet up, and cook what's been have dinner, and eat what's been made for me.
I've got to take this leaf out of your book for sure. I've tried it a little bit because I
Uh-huh.
remember we spoke before, a few
Uh-huh.
weeks ago we spoke about this, and
Mm.
I've done a few bits, but I
Mm.
haven't quite perfected it like you.
Mm.
But I've got another week left to get that done.
Either as moms, you know what, we always feel that we have to be doing all these things, so we're not good moms. It's not true. That's
Yeah.
that's kind of us telling ourselves, and we kind of saying, oh, we're not good moms if we say this or if we say that. But come on, after a certain age, they have to do those things for themselves. It's just life, isn't it? Life is like that. It's like a cycle. When we're young, we do things. As we get older, we got to kind of slow down, and it's their turn now. So they need to
Yeah.
just do it. It's nothing to feel guilty or bad about. And I
Well,
think
it's this mum guilt. It's this mum guilt
mom
that we have.
guilt. And to be
you know.
honest, I did feel a bit mean saying those things at the time, and I thought, oh my gosh, I must be a really awful mom, you know, getting my kids to cook for me and all that. But I feel that, you get some respect for being like that. Others, you just get taken for granted.
Or you get very, very appreciated, like I have been. Oh, mum, we
Mm,
really miss you. Mum, we so miss you. We miss you, your lunchtime cooking and
yeah.
you being here, and
Mm-hmm.
just my physically being here, they're
Mm,
missing.
mm,
Oh, and they get very used to this, don't they? So
yeah.
it is, you're right, it's our guilt,
Mm-hmm.
which we shouldn't be having because we are good mums.
Yeah.
We do everything,
Mm-hmm.
but yet there's this pang in us that makes us feel, oh no, I shouldn't just abandon them. But you're right, they are adults,
Yeah.
absolutely. And at my children's age, I was married.
Mm-hmm.
At your twins' age, I had my first child.
Mm.
You know, and they're still at home with us.
Exactly.
I know times are different. I
Yeah.
know times are different, and we
Yeah.
can't expect the same. But when you think about it,
Mm-hmm.
it's like it was very, very different, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's different. And I think, I was only a kid and I was brought up in a very sheltered way where I was picked and dropped, and it just was the culture. I went to an all girls school. Meeting boys were like, oh my gosh, it's not good. You can only get married to one person, and that's the only person you have anything to do with, kind of thing. And then you suddenly, you do all of these things you have to get used to, come to a different country, run a home. I didn't even know how to cook when I actually came over here, and I had some very disastrous meals at the beginning of my married life. So did my husband. But you just think, okay, I got on with it, and it's high time they do, because they're so many years older than I was at the time. And I think more than anything, as a parent, I feel that we don't do any favors by cocooning them in this
I know.
comfort zone, because they need to be out there having their own families, supporting their own families, and being a strength to people,
Yeah,
themselves and to others. And we kind of hinder that if we are constantly looking after them.
mm,
So, we shouldn't feel guilty. Whatever we do it with their best intentions. So, that's one thing I have, like, tell myself not to feel guilty about stuff that I say to them, because it's
okay.
for their own good.
So as we come to the end of this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
can you give me 3 golden nuggets you'd like to leave for other mothers on this podcast? 3 things that you feel are important to pass on to other mums.
Mm-hmm. I would say use your gut instincts, because you know your kids better than anyone else. You can't all put them into one category and say, oh, this is the way you should do it, this is the way you shouldn't. Just go by your gut instincts, because as moms, we will always have them in the forefront of our thoughts. So
Mhm.
go with your
Yeah.
gut instinct, do what you feel is right, and there's never a right or wrong. It depends on how you feel. So that's
Hmm.
that's one, I guess.
Yes.
And the other one is make them as independent as possible. That's help for their future. And number three as well is very important, I think. Teach them to cope with not having things going the right way, because all this mental health with the younger generation is because they have this fixed idea of how their life's going to be, and it's not like that. So if you teach them to take things as they come, and to deal with difficulties and accept failure, which is not really failure, it's just a barrier, just a challenge, I think then they would be fine, and they would build themselves up without going too deep down.
That's really a really interesting point. Thank you, Rooney. It's been great speaking to you.
Thank you, Nish.
And it was really interesting, and I hope it's helpful to other mothers who listen to this, because the motherhood you've had and your children's upbringing has been very different to the conventional life of the UK. So thank you so much. It's been great speaking to you.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed chatting with you as always.
Thank you.
Okay, Nish, take care.